said, just read it, because I was looking for movies that could be commercial and speak to the human experience.
So it's a bit of a tough adjustment in our house, but it's good. I mean, I have two other daughters, so my oldest is very into the baby, but my middle child, not so much.
I mean, honestly, the way that I get into a character is through their style. So it was more about who Lily is that was.
Blake Lively is reportedly reeling after Justin Baldoni's legal team unveiled a shocking twist, an alleged cache of never-before-seen evidence that could completely upend their escalating courtroom battle. What began as a simmering dispute has now erupted into one of Hollywood's most talked-about feuds, with whispers that this fresh wave of material could reshape the entire narrative surrounding Baldoni's lawsuit against Lively and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Insiders say the potential bombshells range from voice recordings to private text messages and confidential documents, clues that may expose the raw truth behind a partnership gone sour. The unraveling centers around a highly anticipated film project, an adaptation of a beloved bestseller that promised to be both heartfelt and emotionally powerful. Baldoni, admired as both actor and director for bringing tender, human stories to the screen, had poured his heart, soul, and finances into the project. The excitement only intensified when Blake Lively signed on, her star power generating sky-high expectations. But what was billed as a dream collaboration quickly turned into a nightmare. Though Ryan Reynolds was never officially attached, his towering influence and marriage to Lively fueled speculation that he might be quietly involved behind the scenes. Regardless, reports suggest that from the earliest stages, production was plagued by mounting tension. At the core of the conflict was the script itself. Lively, sources claim, voiced concerns about the heavy emotional tone of her role, lobbying for adjustments that would highlight her trademark charm and comedic edge. Baldoni, however, stood firm. He argued that watering down the character's struggles would rob the story of its authenticity, the very element that had made the novel resonate with readers worldwide. The disagreements soon spilled beyond the script. One flashpoint emerged over the protagonist's financial background. In the book, the heroine came from humble beginnings, but on-set photos showed Lively dressed in luxury designer outfits that seemed wildly out of step with the character's modest roots. Fans immediately noticed the disconnect, questioning whether the adaptation was straying too far from the original vision. Baldoni later claimed in legal filings that these wardrobe decisions eroded the character's integrity and damaged the story's emotional truth. Lively's defenders, however, pushed back hard. They insisted the wardrobe was a deliberate creative choice meant to modernize the character and make her relatable to today's audiences. They also noted that high-profile actors frequently collaborate with costume designers and directors to leave their mark on a role, a long-standing Hollywood practice. Still, Baldoni's camp contends that Lively's influence went well beyond fashion. According to insiders, she pushed for changes to pivotal scenes in the screenplay, edits Baldoni believed stripped away the very heart of the novel. Tensions escalated, creative conversations devolved into heated disputes, and what began as an exciting artistic endeavor gradually collapsed into a clash of egos, visions, and reputations. Now, with whispers of damning evidence about to surface, Hollywood is bracing for impact. If the alleged recordings and documents confirm Baldoni's claims, the fallout could be devastating, not only for Lively and Reynolds, but also for the once promising adaptation that fans had so eagerly awaited.
So more honored that because, what we're talking about is so important and so meaningful that we're able to have this much anticipation and so many people want to go see it and are talking about it. That's what I'm grateful for.
And you had a key part in bringing it to the big screen. How did this all come to be?
Well, in 2019, I read the book. I was sent the book by my book agent and friend at the time. And I was looking for films that could inspire, that were commercially viable, but also could really reach.
Adding fuel to the fire, rumors swirled that a major music superstar, widely speculated to be Taylor Swift, one of Blake Lively's closest friends, may have provided creative feedback for certain scenes. While this may have been meant as a friendly collaboration, Justin Baldoni argued it only further clouded his control over the project. Then came the breaking point that shifted the creative clash into a legal battlefield. Lively filed a formal complaint accusing Baldoni and his team of fostering a hostile work environment. She claimed her requests for changes were dismissed and that, instead of addressing her concerns, Baldoni's camp sought to undermine her credibility. Baldoni responded with a staggering $400 million lawsuit for defamation and interference, not just naming Lively but also Ryan Reynolds and other members of their professional circle. The sheer scope of the suit sent shockwaves through Hollywood and escalated the feud to an entirely new level. Baldoni flatly denied Lively's accusations, calling them baseless attempts either to wrest creative control away from him or to tarnish his reputation so severely he would be forced to step aside. Fans who had once been thrilled at the thought of seeing a beloved novel adapted for the screen grew increasingly disillusioned as it became obvious the project was bogged down in delays. Meanwhile, the war of words between the two camps only intensified, with each side lobbing accusations and showing little interest in reconciliation. The true shock, however, came when Reynolds' name surfaced prominently in the filings. According to Baldoni, Reynolds was far from a passive observer. He allegedly became an active behind-the-scenes force, critiquing lines, pushing for comedic beats, and consistently backing Lively in ways Baldoni interpreted as punitive rather than collaborative. Baldoni further claimed that Reynolds amplified Lively's influence to the extent that even routine decisions, like location scouting or approving final script drafts, became excruciatingly slow, as everything had to win Lively's approval, with Reynolds' star power reinforcing her position. The tension, Baldoni alleges, was compounded by personal attacks, including claims that he dismissed Lively's input on key character arcs. He vehemently denies this, insisting their working relationship had once been amicable. But the fragile trust reportedly collapsed during a private meeting at Lively and Reynolds' home. What was meant to be a discussion about stunts for a pivotal rooftop sequence instead became a flashpoint for the feud. Baldoni says he wanted to address safety concerns about a demanding lift and dance stunt, suggesting minor training adjustments to ensure it could be performed comfortably. Reynolds, however, allegedly took the comments as a subtle criticism of Lively's abilities. The disagreement quickly escalated into a heated argument, with raised voices and sharp words exchanged. Baldoni insists his focus was purely practical, aimed at protecting his cast. But the damage was done. The confrontation ended with the rooftop stunt scrapped altogether, leaving yet another scar on a production already teetering under the weight of distrust and animosity.
We have a tough adjustment in our house, but it's good. I mean, I have two other daughters, so my oldest is very into the baby, but my middle child, not so much. But we're thinking of keeping her.
Does she like play with her? What does she think?
Well, she sort of like pretends to play with her. So like in the beginning, our oldest is like loving on her, and she's like very maternal, and then our middle daughter is just.
Blake Lively's lawsuit paints a starkly different picture from Justin Baldoni's narrative, with her legal team describing the conflict as part of a broader pattern of hostility that allegedly emerged whenever she tried to raise concerns or suggest practical improvements to the production. But the revelation of new evidence from Baldoni's lawyer may now swing the story in another dramatic direction, as insiders claim Lively is deeply worried that text messages, voice recordings, or even time-stamped videos could surface and contradict her claims of being cornered and silenced on set. If the records show friendly banter, jokes, mutual excitement, or collaborative discussions, they would stand in sharp contrast to her allegations of working in an oppressive environment. And some who were present during early stages recall that Lively and Baldoni initially shared a supportive, enthusiastic rapport rooted in creative alignment, with Lively even praising his dedication to preserving the emotional depth of the novel, a detail Baldoni's legal team seems eager to highlight in order to argue that their partnership soured not due to genuine discomfort but, as Baldoni alleges, because of a calculated effort to push him aside, while Reynolds' exact role remains murky, though Baldoni's filings accuse him of shaping major creative decisions and backing Lively in ways that dragged out even simple processes. At the same time, speculation has swirled that Taylor Swift, a close friend of Lively's, may have quietly contributed creative ideas or even new lines without Baldoni's knowledge or approval, and a pressing question now is whether his newly uncovered evidence makes explicit reference to her involvement, which, if confirmed, could strengthen claims that outside figures meddled with key aspects of the adaptation and undermined Baldoni's carefully constructed vision. Adding more urgency are whispers of panic inside Lively's camp, with insiders describing frantic late night phone calls and emergency legal meetings as her attorneys comb through every possible piece of evidence in search of anything that could weaken her case, while uncertainty looms over how much of this material will ever be released publicly versus kept sealed in court, though rumors suggest it may include timestamp videos or voice notes that establish who said what and when. Baldoni's team maintains that even a partial release would show that Lively had few, if any, objections to his approach early on, and that her later concerns about the plot were either minor or easily resolved until outside pressures mounted in the marketing phase, when her public image, carefully built on brand endorsements, a vibrant social media presence, and her balance of comedic charm and dramatic skill, began driving her push to soften the novel's heavier and more emotionally raw elements, whereas Baldoni, steadfast in his commitment to authenticity, insists the real battle is between preserving the novel's essence and catering to the marketability of a high-profile star. Complicating matters further is his claim that Lively may not have read the entire book, allegedly relying on quick online searches to piece together details about her character, an approach he argues undermines her creative authority. And if the new evidence includes messages where she asks about plot points that a full reader would already know, it could damage her credibility, though her defenders dismiss this as irrelevant, arguing that an actor's skill and partial familiarity with the source material are often more than enough to deliver a powerful performance. Yet the larger struggle is over moral high ground, with Lively's supporters framing her choices as an attempt to modernize the character for today's audiences and Baldoni's allies portraying her as sacrificing authenticity for marketability, all against the backdrop of his staggering $400 million defamation and interference lawsuit, a figure that dwarfs most Hollywood legal battles and underscores how seriously he views the alleged campaign to discredit him, a campaign he claims was driven by Lively and Reynolds' publicity teams to label him unprofessional and unfit, a perception that, according to his filings, pushed investors, sponsors, and distributors to walk away, causing massive financial losses while inflicting even deeper damage on his professional reputation, which he argues is the true currency of Hollywood, where trust and alliances dictate future opportunities. For Lively, the risks are equally high, since her career thrives on a polished image of relatability, balancing comedic wit with emotional range, and if Baldoni's evidence chips away at her credibility, it could tarnish the persona she has carefully cultivated. While Reynolds too faces serious fallout if it is shown that he leveraged his influence to manipulate the production or pressure Baldoni into relinquishing control, a revelation that could harm his reputation as both a creative collaborator and savvy businessman. Still, the battle is far from settled, as Lively's legal team is expected to present its own trove of evidence to counter Baldoni's narrative and reinforce her claims of being undermined and mistreated, leaving the stakes for all sides higher than ever. And what might have remained a private dispute has instead become a public spectacle fueled by relentless fan scrutiny, with social media lighting up at every leaked set photo, and readers of the source novel fiercely dissecting every detail, protective of its deeply emotional themes and unwilling to see their beloved story reshaped by a clash of egos that has now escalated into one of the most closely watched Hollywood legal sagas in recent memory.
The way that I get into a character is through their style. So it was more about who Lily is that was so fascinating to me, is that she's a walking, talking contradiction, yet it's perfect.
Once whispers of rewrites began circulating, changes that could potentially water down crucial elements of the story, fan outrage reached a breaking point, with social media platforms flooding with side-by-side comparisons of the book's modestly living protagonist and Blake Lively appearing on set in extravagant designer shoes, fueling claims that the adaptation was losing touch with its original authenticity. And Baldoni's lawsuit directly referenced this online uproar, arguing that the backlash only worsened the already strained relationship between him and Lively, though his team insisted he could not be held responsible for how fans reacted to perceived inconsistencies. Adding another twist was Baldoni's separate lawsuit against a major newspaper, accusing the outlet of publishing misleading coverage that amplified the chaos and unfairly repeated unverified claims from Lively's complaint. coverage that Baldoni argued damaged his reputation and painted him in an unflattering light. And as the legal entanglements deepened, observers noted the dispute had spiraled far beyond the set, leaving the fate of the adaptation shrouded in uncertainty and every major player under intense public scrutiny, with Baldoni's supporters insisting he was simply fighting back against baseless narratives while the adaptation itself remained in limbo. Its future unclear as speculation mounted that the property could be revived under new leadership with Lively attached but Baldoni sidelined, or, in a worst-case scenario, abandoned altogether given how toxic the project had become in Hollywood circles, especially as sponsors and distributors grew wary. Meanwhile, Baldoni's legal team dropped cryptic hints about newly surfaced evidence that they claimed would expose the truth of how and why his working relationship with Lively collapsed, with insiders suggesting the communications included early text messages or voice notes that showed Lively enthusiastically praising Baldoni's creative vision and offering glowing feedback that directly contradicted her later allegations, though Lively's camp fought back fiercely, dismissing such messages as cherry-picked and taken out of context, stressing that an isolated note of excitement about one scene could not negate her broader concerns about the project's overall direction, and this tug-of-war over narrative control left both reputations hanging in the balance. Further fueling speculation was a simple line reportedly found in the uncovered evidence, "I don't have anyone with me," a phrase some interpreted as signaling Lively's vulnerability or even regret during the process, though experts cautioned that text messages exchanged in fast-moving, creative environments often lack nuance and could not be read as definitive proof of her mindset. Yet rumors persisted that the newly revealed trove was extensive enough to shed real light on whether Lively truly felt silenced or whether, as Baldoni argued, she shifted her stance due to outside pressures, perhaps even with the influence of her husband Ryan Reynolds, whose role remained one of the saga's biggest mysteries. Baldoni's lawsuit suggested that Reynolds not only offered moral support but may have directly influenced or even co-written certain comedic scenes. Late additions that Baldoni believed clashed with the film's emotional tone and disrupted the carefully balanced atmosphere he had worked to maintain, while Lively's team dismissed this as an oversimplification, insisting that collaborative script input is standard practice in Hollywood, especially when stars with proven comedic timing like Reynolds contribute refinements. But Baldoni's camp claimed the changes driven by Lively and her circle overshadowed the story's most important themes, undermining his ability to stay true to the novel's essence. And this question of artistic integrity versus star power became the core of the conflict. Beyond creative disputes, the sheer scale of Baldoni's $400 million lawsuit stunned industry insiders, a figure rivaling blockbuster budgets and underscoring the seriousness with which he viewed the alleged defamation and business interference. Though experts noted defamation suits are notoriously difficult to win since they require proving a direct link between false claims and concrete damages, yet Baldoni's team expressed confidence, citing not only reputational harm but also measurable financial fallout, including projects that collapsed under the cloud of controversy. While on the other side, Lively's countersuit was no small matter either, as she argued that her valid concerns about script and production were twisted to portray her as difficult, damaging her reputation and making some filmmakers hesitant to work with her for fear of similar disputes. Meanwhile, social media remained relentless, with fans of the original novel dissecting every leaked photo and update, protective of the book's emotional depth and furious at any sign it was being sacrificed for Hollywood gloss, and industry analysts warned that the longer this dragged out, the less viable the adaptation would become commercially, with its survival hinging on whether either Baldoni's or Lively's side could convincingly reclaim the moral high ground in the eyes of both the public and the courts, because ultimately reputation is the true currency in Hollywood, and both camps now stood at risk of losing it.